Words of Joy and Hope. 29th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Hear a Gospel according to Matthew chapter 22, verses 15 to 22. Commentary of Father Fernando Armelini.
Una buona domenica.
A good Sunday for everyone. The saying of Jesus give to Caesar what Caesar's and to God what is God's is one of the best known and also one of the most cited and sadly often misquoted texts of the Bible. We have heard it mentioned by those who have political power when they want to demand the ecclesiastical hierarchy to stay in their place and not meddle in political affairs. And those who rightly defend the secular state use it as a motto. Too bad that they also caught it out of place. We have also heard it from the ecclesiastical authorities. They direct it to the rulers because they claim from them the rights that belong to religious authority. In the past, it was also quoted by the ecclesiastical authority when it felt authorized to attribute a sacred character to certain political institutions and also to justify the temporal power of the church. More commonly, today some use it to invite someone who owes something. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Let us try to set the scene in which Jesus pronounced this phrase because it is very important for us to better understand the message that he wants to give us. Jesus has been in Jerusalem for a few days and he has already had a series of very lively disputes with the religious leaders. Then he made a provocative gesture by expelling the vendors from the temple. This meant a direct attack to the priestly caste, which was affected in their economic interests. In short, a very tense situation has risen between Jesus and his adversaries. And today we are again faced with a debate between him and those authorities. And to set the scene, we must also mention the political situation. Judea was a region known in the Roman Empire for its turbulence. They were never quiet, but the years of the public life of Jesus passed peacefully. There had been riots, but 20 or 30 years before, riots were immediately suppressed by the bloodshed and followed by crucifixions. A tragic one, for example, was the one that happened in Sepphoris when Jesus was 3 years old. There had been a revolt and Varus had suffocated them in blood and had crucified 2,000 rebels a few kilometers from Nazareth. It was that Quintilio Varus who later lost his life in the famous battle of Teutoburg. 10 years after this revolt, another revolt by Judas the Galilean had taken place, which is also mentioned in the Acts of the Apostles during the census of Quirinius. Jesus was 13 years old when this revolt happened, which was also followed by crucifixions. But at the time of Jesus' public life, the situation was calm. The zealots who will cause the revolt that would lead to the destruction of the city of Jerusalem had not yet happened. In Palestine, therefore, the people lived subject to Rome, although they were forced to endure an extremely burdensome tax system. There were taxes for everything: land, properties, buildings, transactions, the profession tax, road tolls, when transporting goods. In short, some calculations indicated that 50% of the profits ended up in taxes. But there was a tax which was the most hated of all, and it was the tax for all, in Latin tributum capitis, which is the tribute of a denarius, that everyone, women from 12 years old, men from 14 years old up to 65 years old, had to pay. And it is to this tax that today's evangelical episode refers. Clearly, not wanting to pay taxes was very dangerous because the person would be accused of sedition. This will also be one of the accusations that will be made against Jesus in a subtle way, that of inciting people not to pay taxes to Caesar. This is referenced in the allegations that were made against Jesus in front of Pilate. It is in this context that the adversaries of Jesus tried to trick him because they want to find a reason to report and condemn him. Let us listen.
The Pharisees went off and plotted how they might entrap Jesus in speech. They sent their disciple to him with the Herodian saying, "Teacher, we know that you are a truthful man and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth, and you are not concerned with anyone's opinion, for you do not regard a personal status. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it lawful to pay a census tax to Caesar or not?"
Two groups of opponents of Jesus enter the scene. They are the Pharisees, whom we know very well because they continually appear in the Gospels. They are the spiritual guides, the guardians of the tradition of Israel. They are the ones who determine what is right and what is wrong. They know the Old Testament. Therefore, people who relate to the spiritual aspects of the people of Israel. The second group are the Herodians. We know them less, but they also appear in the Gospels. Jesus warns against the leaven both of the Pharisees and of the Herodians. This alliance of the two groups is strange because politically the Pharisees and the Herodians were positioned on opposite sides. The Pharisees considered it ungodly to support the Roman occupation because the Romans were pagans who desecrated the Holy Land with their idols and their immoral life. The Herodians, on the other hand, were friends of Herod and Antipas, from whom they took their name, Herod, whom Jesus calls the fox. It doesn't mean clever, it means puppet, without personality, submitting to the emperor Tiberius, the tyrant on duty. 10 years before he had built the new capital, Herod resided first in Sepphoris near Nazareth. Then, when he built the new capital, he called it Tiberias, of course, a bow to the emperor Tiberius. The Herodians were his friends as well as collaborators of the Roman occupiers. We find these two groups allied against Jesus, and the reason for this unnatural alliance will be found precisely in today's gospel passage, because with his message, Jesus will touch both groups. They come together and start with a long introduction with a complaint, which is the most beautiful eulogy for Jesus which appears in the Gospels. It's a praise that comes from his adversaries. They say, "You are a fair person, everyone knows it. You teach the way of God, you are not subject to anyone and do not despise anyone." Therefore, they recognize that Jesus rejects compromises and has the courage to speak his mind. On the lips of the Pharisees and Herodians, these complimentary words have only one purpose: force Jesus not to escape not to ramble with reasoning. They want him to say yes or no. Because they had studied their trap well, whatever answer Jesus gives, he will get into trouble. If he says yes, it is lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, then he becomes a friend of the Romans, a collaborator, something that displeased all the people. If he says no, the Herodians were ready to denounce him as a subversive and anti-Roman. We must also be attentive to praise, because those who praise us always have some goal. They certainly want to have us in their hand, to have us on their side, or want to ask us for a favor. After the praise, they throw a trick question at him. Give us your opinion. Yes or no? Don't digress. Is it lawful to pay the tax to Caesar? Let us listen to Jesus' response. Knowing their malice, Jesus said, "Why are you testing me, you hypocrites? Show me the coin that pays the census tax." Then they handed him the Roman coin. He said to them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" They replied, "Caesar's." At that he said to them, "Then repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." Before answering the question, Jesus says to the Pharisees and Herodians, "Look, I have realized that you are setting me up, but I have no intention to respond in an evasive or a deliberately enigmatic way, so that later everyone can interpret my words however they want. No, I want to get to the heart of the problem. And let us note well, I think that today many preachers will insist on the duty to pay taxes, which is always an adequate recommendation. But Jesus today is not talking about paying taxes. It will be Paul in the letter to the Romans who will express himself very clearly on the subject when he writes to Christians living in the capital. We are in the time of Nero. At the beginning of his reign, this emperor was 20 years old, and at first he was indulgent, moderate. Paul writes to these Christians and says, "All are subject to the established authorities." In fact, there is no authority if it is not from God, and those that exist are established by God, and whoever opposes authority opposes an order that is wanted by God. Man is sociable, and that is why someone is needed to organize and structure the society and then draw the consequences. We must be subject to this authority, not only out of fear of punishment, but out of duty of conscience. And that is why he recommends pay to all their dues, taxes to whom taxes are due, toll to whom toll is due, respect to whom respect is due, honor to whom honor is due. Paul speaks of it as something evident in itself. It was not necessary for the Son of Man to come to tell us that we have to pay taxes. Everyone has a duty to contribute to the good progress of social life according to their possibilities. And the Christian in this must be an exemplary citizen, because you have to love, and loving not only means loving only those who are in need or are close, but it is a manifestation of love to want this society to be structured in such a way that everyone may live as true children of God. The problem, therefore, is another. And it is very well stated in the question, posed by the Pharisees and Herodians. Is it lawful or not to pay tribute to the emperor? Paying the tax means recognizing Tiberius as king, when the only king of Israel is God. Jesus responds, "Show me the tax coin," and they present him with a denarius. It is interesting that Jesus asks them to show him the coin. It means that he doesn't have it, but they do it. And Jesus does not reproach them because they have the coins. They did not put their hands in their pockets because at that time the clothes had no pockets but sleeves. The coins were kept in a bag or under the tunic. They take out their bag and show the coin. Jesus called them hypocrites. Why? Because all of them normally use these currencies when they go to the market as the perutot. The pure coins circulated only in the temple to make the offerings, and outside they were worth absolutely nothing. It was a good thing that people used these coins. Jesus does not care about this. This is what Jesus meant to tell them. Don't be scrupulous about using the coins when you go shopping. I don't have them, unfortunately, but the ones I receive, I also use them when I render a service. This is not a problem. It is interesting that they are only scrupulous about using them to pay tribute. When Jesus has the coin in his hand, he asks for two things. Let us stay tuned to find out and where he wants to take us. Question: whose image and inscription is this? They answer him, of Caesar. This tax coin to a pious Jew arouses disgust just by looking at it. Why? Because we know very well what the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Exodus established, that the Israelites cannot make images. The reason is that the danger of these images then become idols, which they then invoke exactly as pagans do. And the God of Israel is unique and jealous. He does not want idols to be venerated at his side. Let us see this money coined by Tiberius. You see it behind me. On one side has the representation of the emperor of Rome. Here is the image and inscription. Tiberius Caesar, Augustus, son of the divine Augustus. It is mentioned twice, Augustus, Sebastos, the divine. On the reverse is the title, Pontifex Maximus, Supreme Pontiff, Tiberius, and the image of a woman sitting in the symbol of peace, Livia, probably the mother of Tiberius, the third wife of Octavian. Tiberius is portrayed as Jupiter and Livia as Juno. I said that a pious Jew, upon seeing this coin, understands this as full-blown idolatry. Therefore, the problem is not about the duty of paying tax or not paying, but the problem of idolatry. So let us try to understand where Jesus wants to take the discourse now. Jesus asks, where did the emperor Tiberius put his effigy? On money. Do you know how Tiberius looks like? For that, you must focus on money. Hence, is the representative of on earth, the supreme pontiff of this God, that is money. It is he who runs the cult of money. the idol that everyone worships in his empire. It is money that guides the life of the empire, and Tiberius is the high priest of this religion. We remember that Jesus contrasted the irreconcilable, the worship of true God, and the worship of money. No one is an atheist. In the Bible, there is no fear of atheism. There is no mention of atheism. The danger is idolatry because everyone has a God. There is always someone or something that constitutes the reference point for all thoughts, for all decisions, for all options. It is the person or the thing that suggests you the way to behave daily. For example, if the God you have in mind and who guides you in is the God of Jesus of Nazareth, he will show you at all times how you can make someone happy. If the God you worship is success, career, it will be this idol that will show you what friendships to cultivate, what cunning to turn to, whom to flatter. And of course, every God makes his promise to his devotees. And we know that the God of money promises a lot and therefore has many worshippers. You must be careful because the orders that this God, that is money, gives are also orders against people. Here, Tiberius has put his effigy, his image in money, and he is the supreme pontiff of those who adore money. It is on this dehumanizing cult that Jesus wants to focus his attention, not about paying taxes or not, or whether or not to use this currency in the markets. He drew attention to the image and the inscription and says, repay to Caesar what is Caesar's. He does not say, give Caesar. They had asked, it is allowed to give. And he answers, repay, not give. Repay what? Let us try not to be hypocrites, says Jesus. The problem is not about to use or not to use Caesar's coin, but to realize that you too, hypocrites, are fully involved in the philosophy behind this image and his inscription. The philosophy on which the pagan world is based, which worships the anti-God, is not money that is diabolical. It is the cult of money. It is the money that puts human beings at its service. In a society run by an emperor who stamps his face on money, who is it that counts? It counts who has money. And as long as it produces money, where money is worshipped, the poor are worth a pair of sandals, says the prophet Amos, or less than a sheep, said Jesus. What does Jesus say? Return this idol to Caesar. He brought it into Israel. It does not belong to the spiritual identity of the people of Israel. Maintain purity as a people consecrated to the only God, and return to pagan Caesar his idolatrous religion. Jesus wants them to get to the heart of the problem. Second thing Jesus says, and to God what belongs to God. The speech keeps turning around the image and the inscription. Tiberius put his own image and inscription on the money. Where has God placed his image and his inscription? We all know the answer. It is immediately clear. God put his image in man. It is in man who placed his inscription, that he placed his name. There is a story told about the great Rabbi Hillel, a famous teacher who lived a generation before Jesus. It was a story known to everyone, even children in the time of Jesus. At the end of a lesson, his disciples asked the teacher, "Where are you going?" And he replied, "I am going to perform a miswa, a commandment." "But what miswa are you going to fulfill?" He replied, "I am going to take a bath." The disciples said, "But we have never heard that there is a miswa which orders to bathe." The great Rabbi Hillel responds, "There are images of kings erected in the theaters, in the circuses, in public places, and there are people who keep them clean and get paid for it. If anyone insults one of these statues, it is an insult to the emperor directly. We who were created in the image and likeness of God, as the scripture says, how much more should we keep clean and wash our bodies to honor the Creator we resemble?" This story was well known to all. So, this is what the image means. This was the topic that Jesus wanted his listeners to focus on. Return this image of God, which is that of Tiberius, which is what the high priest of the cult of money does. And now let us see what is there to give back to God. Humans must be returned because they are in God's own image. We can see the inscription of this image in the book of Deuteronomy and in many other instances as well. In the Old Testament it is said, "Where did God put his name?" In Israel he put his name. In Isaiah chapter 43 he says, "It is the Israelites who bear my name." In the book of Revelation chapter 14, those 144,000 who bear the name of the Lamb and the name of his Father written on his forehead, it is upon man where God has placed his image and his inscription, and therefore it must be returned to God. We cannot take possession of man because man belongs only to God. All creatures belong to man, but man belongs only to God. Specifically, the two groups that Jesus faces, what should they return to God? Let us now leave Caesar alone. The Herodians are collaborators of the despotic power of Tiberius, who seized people. He exploited them, enslaved them. The Roman Empire is full of slaves, and this is justified by the god money. People are humiliated, deprived of freedom, and if people are not free, they cannot be totally human. They no longer resemble God. Where the tyrants on duty want to build their towers that reach heaven, then it happens exactly what the rabbis said of the construction of the Tower of Babel. They said that when a man fell from the tower, no one paid any attention. But when a brick was broken, everyone would burst into tears. The pharaohs can use horses, chariots, oxen, but not people, because people do not belong to them. They belong to God. They must be returned to God. This is what Jesus wants people to understand. People subject to idols and tyrants are not people. Therefore, the Herodians who support this political structure that oppresses people know what to return to God. And whoever thinks like them should do an examination of conscience, because the one who rules over people is a Herodian. The Pharisees, they too must return people to God. The catechesis of the Pharisees was to present people not to God, but to an idol that they had invented. An idol because it required sacrifices, offerings, incense, burnt offerings. This God whom they invented bestowed his favors to those who bowed down before him, to those who obeyed his orders. The transgressions, this is not the authentic God. It is not the God of Jesus of Nazareth. This is an idol invented by man, which conforms to their reasoning, to their criteria. They have invented it. They have created this God. This is not the true God, the God of love, the authentic image of God. These Pharisees have him before their eyes. He is the man, Jesus of Nazareth, perfectly reproduces this image. Who adheres to this image of man clings to the true God. I wish you all a good Sunday and a good week.